You know what really grinds my gears? When millionaires who've already screwed up more times than we can count get away with another outrageous incident and their army of defenders comes rushing in like he's some kind of misunderstood saint who deserves a trophy for basic human decency. And before you Logan Paul fans start typing your angry comments calling me a hater, a clout chaser, jealous, bitter, or whatever other insult you've got locked and loaded in your keyboard warrior arsenal, just wait, because what I'm about to show you is going to make your blood boil regardless of which side you're on. Logan Paul just slammed a fan's camera during the WWE War Games Survivor Series match, and the internet is absolutely losing its mind in a way we haven't seen since the last time he did something monumentally stupid and got away with it. But here's the thing that nobody's talking about, the thing that's being conveniently swept under the rug by his PR team and his loyal followers who would defend him if he committed actual crimes on camera. The thing that's going to make you rethink everything you thought you knew about celebrity culture, accountability, parasocial relationships, and why we keep letting these people get away with what could be classified as literal assault. Stay with me because by the end of this video, you're going to be questioning whether you've been defending the wrong person this entire time, or if the mob mentality has spiraled so far out of control that we're trying to destroy someone's life over a moment of human weakness. Either way, I guarantee you're not going to be able to stay silent about this, and I'm counting on you hitting that comments section harder than Logan hit that phone. Let's set the scene with all the gory details that make this situation so much worse than the headlines suggest. This wasn't just some random meet and greet or casual public appearance. This was WWE War Games at Survivor Series, one of the biggest events on the professional wrestling calendar, a pay-per-view spectacle that fans shell out serious money to attend. We're talking hundreds of dollars for decent seats, thousands if you want to be ringside where the real action happens. Logan Paul, the controversial YouTuber turned WWE wrestler turned energy drink mogul turned crypto scammer, allegedly entrepreneur, was competing in what's supposed to be one of the most intense and exciting match formats in all of wrestling. War Games is legendary, it's brutal, it's chaotic, it's the kind of match that's supposed to showcase athleticism and storytelling at the highest level. And there's Logan, walking to the ring or leaving the ring, sources vary on the exact timing but does it really matter, surrounded by fans who had paid their hard-earned money, real money in an economy where groceries cost twice what they did last year, taken time out of their lives, possibly traveled from different states or even countries because WWE events draw international crowds, arranged their entire schedules around this event, and showed up to support the spectacle despite everything, and I mean absolutely everything, Logan has done over the years that should have disqualified him from even getting a WWE contract in the first place. Remember the Suicide Forest video that traumatized an entire generation and made Japan question whether American tourists should even be allowed in their country? Remember the Crypto Zoo scandal where he allegedly scammed millions of dollars from his own fans, the very people who made him rich and famous in the first place, and then went radio silent when people started demanding answers and refunds? Remember the countless apologies that seemed so sincere in the moment, complete with tears and promises of personal growth, until the next controversy popped up exactly 2 months later like clockwork, making those apologies look like calculated PR moves rather than genuine remorse? Yeah, wrestling fans know all about this because the wrestling community has been divided on Logan Paul since day one. Some appreciate his athleticism and the attention he brings to WWE. Others absolutely despise that he's taking a spot that could go to someone who's dedicated their entire life to the business, someone who's paid their dues in tiny independent promotions for years, someone who actually respects the industry instead of treating it like another thing to add to his resume of controversies. But regardless of which camp you're in, the fans at War Games showed up, they filled that arena, they created the electric atmosphere that makes these events special. And how does Logan Paul repay that dedication? By grabbing a fan's phone at ringside and slamming it to the ground like he's auditioning for a role as a temperamental toddler who just got told no for the first time in his privileged, consequence-free life, like he's throwing the kind of tantrum that would get a regular person arrested for destruction of property and assault. The video footage is everywhere now, spreading across social media platforms faster than his team can possibly contain it, going more viral than any of his actual wrestling highlights. You can see Logan at ringside during or after the War Games match, probably still pumped full of adrenaline from the performance, walking past the barrier that separates the wrestlers from the audience. A fan, clearly excited beyond measure, their hands probably shaking because they're this close to someone they've seen on television, holds up their phone to record the moment. This is what you do at wrestling events. This is literally wrestling fan culture 101. You record your favorite wrestlers as they make their entrance. You try to get footage of them up close. You capture those moments when they interact with the crowd. WWE not only allows this, they encourage it because fan-generated content on social media is free marketing for them. The entire business model of modern wrestling depends on fans posting their experiences online, creating buzz, making moments go viral. But Logan, in a move that absolutely nobody saw coming except maybe the people who've been paying attention to his pattern of behavior over the past decade, and certainly something that goes against everything WWE stands for in terms of fan engagement, reaches out with the kind of aggression you'd expect from someone being physically threatened, grabs the phone with force, and slams it down with enough velocity to ensure maximum damage. Now here's where it gets even more insane. This happened at a WWE event, an event run by a billion-dollar publicly traded company that has strict protocols, security measures, and standards of conduct precisely to avoid incidents like this. WWE has spent decades, literally decades, building relationships with their fan base, understanding that wrestling only works when fans feel connected to the performers and invested in the product. Vince McMahon, for all his faults, understood that the fans are the lifeblood of the business. Triple H, who's running things now, has made fan engagement a top priority. WWE superstars regularly interact with fans, sign autographs, pose for photos, and yes, allow themselves to be filmed because they understand that these moments create lifelong memories and loyal customers. John Cena built an empire on making wishes come true and connecting with fans. The Undertaker, despite his legendary intimidating character, was always respectful to fans outside of his performance. Even heels, the villains of wrestling, know how to play their role without actually harming anyone or destroying their property. But Logan Paul, who's been in WWE for what, a couple of years maybe, who hasn't paid a fraction of the dues that most wrestlers pay, who got his contract purely because of his outside fame and social media following rather than his dedication to the craft, decides that the rules don't apply to him. The audio from the various fan recordings captures gasps from the crowd, the collective shock of dozens of people who just witnessed something their brains need a moment to process, someone yelling what the hell, another voice screaming that's someone's phone, and the immediate awkward tension that fills the air when everyone realizes they just witnessed something they probably shouldn't have, something that's going to end up on the internet within seconds because we're at a wrestling event, where everyone has their phones out. The fan is left standing there in complete disbelief, presumably with a broken phone and broken screen at minimum, definitely with a broken spirit and shattered illusion, absolutely with a destroyed perception of someone they may have actually supported despite all the controversies, and certainly with a story they'll be telling for years in wrestling forums and social media comments, just not the kind of story they hoped to be telling when they bought those expensive tickets months in advance, thinking they were going to witness an incredible War Games match and maybe get some cool footage to post online. Now here's where it gets interesting, and by interesting I mean absolutely infuriating to the point where you want to throw your own phone, except that would make you just as bad as Logan. The Logan Paul defenders immediately mobilize like they're part of some kind of rapid response team that's been trained and drilled for exactly this scenario, and they've been working overtime to spin this in every possible direction. Within hours, maybe even minutes, because these people live on social media waiting for any criticism of their idol, the comment sections across every platform were completely flooded with excuses that range from slightly reasonable to absolutely delusional. He was in character, even though breaking character to assault a fan isn't how professional wrestling works. He was still in the zone from the intense War Games match, as if being pumped up from a performance gives you the right to destroy property. The fan was probably being invasive, even though standing at ringside with your phone out is literally what every single person does at wrestling events. You don't know what it's like to perform at that level and have cameras in your face, completely ignoring that every other wrestler deals with the exact same thing without assaulting anyone. He's human, he makes mistakes, as if being human excuses assault and destruction of property. That fan probably said something we can't hear in the video, just making up entire scenarios with zero evidence to justify the unjustifiable. He was protecting his space, as if a fan with a phone poses any threat whatsoever. At least he's bringing mainstream attention to WWE, as if that justifies everything. Other wrestlers have done worse, which even if true doesn't excuse this behavior. And my personal favorite that's been circulating through wrestling Twitter, heels are supposed to be hated, so this is just good heel work, completely missing the point that there's a massive difference between working the crowd as part of your character and actually committing assault. And you know what? On the surface, if you squint really hard and ignore all context, common sense, and basic understanding of how professional wrestling works, some of those arguments might seem reasonable to someone who's heavily invested in defending Logan no matter what he does. Performing at a major WWE event does come with unique pressures and adrenaline that regular people will never fully understand. Coming out of a War Games match, which is genuinely physically demanding even though the outcomes are predetermined, could leave someone amped up and not thinking clearly. We should extend some grace to performers because they are human beings with feelings, limitations, and moments where they're not at their best. But let's pump the brakes for just a second and examine what's actually happening here with the kind of critical thinking that seems to be in short supply these days, because the mental gymnastics required to defend this behavior could qualify for the Olympics, win the gold medal, and then get a multi-year endorsement deal for performing such impressive feats of logical contortion that defy the laws of physics and reason. First of all, and this cannot be emphasized enough especially in the context of professional wrestling, Logan Paul chose this career. He wasn't drafted into WWE against his will. He wasn't forced to sign a contract at gunpoint. He deliberately pursued a wrestling career, negotiated what's probably an incredibly lucrative deal, and inserted himself into an industry with established norms, traditions, and expectations. When that wrestling career was making him millions upon millions of dollars on top of his already substantial wealth, when it was giving him mainstream credibility he could never achieve through YouTube alone, when it was opening doors to new audiences and opportunities, when WWE was promoting him heavily and giving him prominent matches at major events including this War Games match which plenty of full-time wrestlers would kill to be part of, he had absolutely no problem with any of it. He didn't complain about the fan interactions. He didn't object to the expectation that wrestlers engage with the audience. He didn't refuse to work shows because fans would have their phones out. You don't get to cherry-pick the benefits of being a WWE superstar, the money and fame and prestige, while rejecting the basic responsibilities that come with it, like not assaulting fans who paid to be there. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this has ever worked in the history of professional wrestling, an industry built entirely on the relationship between performers and fans. Every single wrestler who's ever made it to WWE has dealt with fans and cameras. The Rock dealt with it and became one of the biggest stars on the planet. Stone Cold Steve Austin dealt with it during the peak of his popularity when he couldn't go anywhere without being mobbed. John Cena dealt with it for 2 decades, often staying after shows for hours to interact with fans. Roman Reigns deals with it. Cody Rhodes deals with it. Seth Rollins deals with it. Even part-timers like Brock Lesnar, who notoriously keeps to himself and doesn't do much media, still manages to not assault fans at ringside. The Undertaker maintained one of the most protected characters in wrestling history and never once destroyed a fan's property. Explain to me how Logan Paul, with a fraction of the wrestling experience, a fraction of the dedication to the industry, and a fraction of the respect for the business, somehow can't handle what literally thousands of wrestlers before him have handled without incident? Being filmed by fans at ringside during a WWE event is literally part of the job description. It's like a chef complaining about having to cook food, or a pilot complaining about having to fly planes, or in this specific case, like a professional wrestler complaining about fans being at a wrestling show. If you didn't want to deal with passionate fans who document everything, maybe don't sign a contract with the biggest professional wrestling company in the world that's built its entire modern business model around social media engagement and fan-generated content. Second, and this is absolutely crucial to understanding why this incident is so much worse than his defenders are making it out to be, there's a massive, enormous, Grand Canyon-sized difference between staying in character as a heel and committing what could legally be considered assault and destruction of property. Professional wrestling has heels, the bad guys, the villains, the characters you're supposed to boo and hate. Heels insult the crowd, they cheat during matches, they act arrogant and disrespectful, they do everything possible to generate heat and make fans want to see them lose. But there are rules, unwritten codes that every wrestler understands, boundaries that separate working the crowd from actual misconduct. A heel can point at a fan and talk trash. A heel can gesture dismissively at the crowd. A heel can even interact with signs or props in character. What a heel cannot do, what crosses the line from performance into criminal behavior, is physically grab someone's property and destroy it. That's not heel work. That's not generating heat. That's not staying in character. That's actual assault and destruction of property that could result in criminal charges if the victim decides to press them and has the resources to follow through legally. MJF, who many consider the best heel in wrestling today, generates incredible heat without ever actually harming anyone or breaking laws. He insults people, he says outrageous things, he makes fans genuinely angry, but he does it all within the boundaries of performance. CM Punk during his heel runs would antagonize crowds mercilessly but never crossed into actual assault. Even the most intense heels in wrestling history, guys who had fans literally trying to attack them because they were so hated, understood where the line was and never crossed it. But Logan Paul either doesn't understand these boundaries or more likely doesn't care because he's never faced real consequences for crossing boundaries in any aspect of his public life. And the fact that people are trying to defend this as heel work shows a fundamental misunderstanding of professional wrestling, its history, its ethics, and the social contract between performers and audiences that makes the entire industry possible. If Logan was uncomfortable with being filmed, if he was having a moment where the pressure got to him, if he genuinely felt overwhelmed by the attention after an intense match, he has about 700 better options available to him that don't involve violence or property damage. He could have kept walking and ignored the fan completely, which is what most wrestlers do when they're not in the mood to interact. He could have his security team, which WWE definitely provides for their talent, especially controversial figures like him, create more distance between himself and the crowd. He could simply move faster, get to the back quicker, remove himself from the situation entirely. He could have used hand gestures or facial expressions to stay in character without physical contact. He could, and here's a wild, revolutionary idea that might blow some minds, have requested that WWE adjust his entrance or exit path to avoid close fan interaction if it's such a problem for him. What he cannot do, what nobody can do regardless of their fame or wealth or status or how intense their match was, is physically grab someone else's property and destroy it because he's having a moment or feeling pumped up or just doesn't feel like dealing with people. That's not staying in character. That's not protecting his space. That's not setting healthy boundaries. That's a grown man, a massive human being who works out constantly and has significant size and strength advantages over average fans, throwing a tantrum and using his physical superiority, his celebrity status, and the power dynamic that heavily favors him to lash out at someone who literally just wanted footage of a wrestler they paid to see, someone who poses absolutely zero threat, someone who is significantly less powerful in every measurable way, someone who can't fight back without risking arrest and a lifetime ban from WWE events. The economic aspect of this cannot be ignored or downplayed either, especially when we're talking about fans who already spend hundreds of dollars just to attend the event. Smartphones aren't cheap, and they haven't been cheap for over a decade now. Depending on what model that fan had, and based on the footage circulating, it looks like a newer iPhone or Samsung flagship device. Logan could have just destroyed anywhere from $600 to well over $1,300 of someone else's property in a split second of uncontrolled aggression. For Logan Paul, who makes more money in a single day than most people make in an entire year, who probably got paid 6 or 7 figures for that one War Games appearance, that's pocket change. That's literally less than what he probably spends on a single watch or a single night out at whatever expensive establishment he's flexing at this week. That's a rounding error in his monthly budget. But for that fan, that could be an absolutely devastating financial loss that impacts their life for months. That could be their only phone, their primary means of communication, the device they need for work, for managing their schedule, for staying in touch with family, for handling emergencies. That could be a device they saved up for months to afford, putting aside money from every paycheck, sacrificing other purchases and experiences to finally get something nice. That could contain irreplaceable photos of deceased loved ones, videos of their kids growing up, memories from important life events that cannot be recovered if the device is damaged beyond repair, and ironically it definitely contained the footage from the War Games event that they'll never get back now. And let's talk about the compounding financial damage here, because it gets worse. This fan already spent significant money on War Games tickets. Depending on their seats, that could be anywhere from $150 to over $1,000. Then there's travel costs if they came from out of town, which many WWE fans do for major events. Hotel costs for at least one night, probably more if they made a weekend of it. Food and drink at the arena, which we all know is criminally overpriced. Maybe they bought merchandise, a program, or other memorabilia. We're talking about someone who potentially spent well over $1,000 total for this experience, and the highlight of their trip, the moment they were most excited about, resulted in their expensive property being destroyed by the very person they came to see. The financial and emotional damage here is staggering when you actually think about it from the victim's perspective rather than from the perspective of a millionaire who'll never miss that money. Beyond the monetary value and the data loss, there's the emotional and psychological impact that's going to last far longer than any phone or any physical injury would. Imagine being such a devoted wrestling fan that you invest all that money to attend War Games, one of the marquee events of the year. You're excited, your heart is racing throughout the show, the matches are delivering, the atmosphere is electric. You see Logan Paul, whether you love him or hate him or have mixed feelings, and you instinctively do what every single person at a wrestling event does, you hold up your phone to capture the moment. And in response to that completely normal, expected, encouraged behavior, he destroys your property in front of thousands of people. The humiliation of having thousands in the arena and eventually millions online witness your moment of victimization. The shock and confusion of trying to process what just happened, why it happened, whether you somehow did something wrong even though you know you didn't. The immediate, crushing realization that someone you may have defended online, someone whose WWE career you may have supported despite the controversies, doesn't see you as a human being but as an annoyance, an obstacle, something beneath consideration or respect. The anger that builds as the adrenaline wears off and you fully comprehend that you've been assaulted and your property has been destroyed. The helplessness of knowing that even if you wanted to pursue legal action, you're up against someone with unlimited resources for lawyers who can drag out any case until you give up or go bankrupt trying to get justice. That fan went from anticipating one of the best nights of their life, maybe even planning to post their War Games footage online and get some viral attention themselves, to experiencing one of the most degrading and infuriating moments imaginable, a moment they'll replay in their mind every single time they think about WWE or Logan Paul for the rest of their lives. And it's all captured on video from multiple angles because wrestling fans always have their phones out, so this person's humiliation is preserved forever in high definition for the entire world to see, analyze, comment on, meme, and use as evidence of exactly who Logan Paul is when the cameras he doesn't control are watching. What makes this situation even more maddening, even more rage-inducing, even more proof that the system is broken beyond any hope of repair, is the pattern. This isn't Logan Paul's first controversy, not even close. This isn't his first time showing contempt for the people who support him financially. This isn't his first demonstration that he believes rules, laws, and basic human decency don't apply to him. This is a man who has repeatedly, consistently, without fail shown that the normal standards of society are for other people, that he can do whatever he wants whenever he wants to whoever he wants, and every single time he faces consequences or even just criticism, he pulls out the same tired playbook that has worked time and time again. He releases an emotional apology video where he looks directly into the camera with practiced sincerity, probably filmed in some aesthetically pleasing location with perfect lighting. He cries a little, or at least makes it look like he's crying, with the tears strategically timed for maximum emotional manipulation. He promises to be better, to learn and grow from his mistakes, to do the work on himself, using all the right therapy speak and self-improvement language that modern audiences have been conditioned to accept as genuine. He maybe takes a brief break from social media or public appearances, just long enough for the news cycle to move on and for people's limited attention spans to shift to the next scandal or crisis. And then he comes right back, usually bigger and richer than before, with seemingly no lessons learned, no genuine changes to his behavior or character, and no intention of ever actually being accountable for anything he does. The Suicide Forest video should have ended his career permanently. Full stop. No debate. No second chances. No road to redemption. Filming a dead body for entertainment, laughing and making jokes in the presence of someone who died by suicide, posting it online for his millions of young impressionable viewers who look up to him and model their own behavior after his, showing such profound disrespect to the deceased, to their grieving family, to everyone struggling with mental health issues and suicidal ideation, to an entire culture that holds deep reverence and respect for death and suicide, that should have been career-ending. That should have resulted in permanent deplatforming from YouTube, loss of all brand partnerships, public disgrace, and permanent exile from any form of mainstream success. But he apologized with what looked like genuine emotion, took a brief break during which his channel actually grew because controversy breeds curiosity, and came back to even greater success than before. He learned exactly the wrong lesson from that experience. He learned that consequences are temporary, that public outrage has a shelf life, that if you just wait it out and say the right things, you can survive anything. The Crypto Zoo scandal should have resulted in serious criminal investigations, federal charges for securities fraud, massive class action lawsuits, prison time, and financial ruin. He promoted a crypto project to his fans, many of whom were young people with limited financial literacy who trusted him implicitly. They invested their hard-earned money based on his personal endorsement and specific promises about returns. The project failed spectacularly in a way that looked increasingly like a coordinated pump and dump scheme, and Logan walked away with millions of dollars in profits while his fans, the very people who made him wealthy enough to get involved in crypto in the first place, lost everything they invested and then some. People lost their savings. People went into debt. People had their financial futures destroyed. And Logan's response? Vague statements, deflection, blaming others involved in the project, promising to make things right while never actually providing concrete plans or restitution, and then just moving on to the next venture. But again, there were no real consequences. No criminal charges. No civil judgments that actually forced him to pay back what he took. He just continued building his empire, partnering with WWE, launching Prime Energy drinks, expanding his brand, while those victims were left holding worthless tokens and empty promises. Now we have this phone incident at WWE War Games, which in the grand scheme of Logan Paul controversies might seem minor, might not even crack the top 5 worst things he's done, might look like small potatoes compared to filming dead bodies or stealing millions through crypto scams. But it's actually the perfect crystallization and representation of everything wrong with Logan Paul specifically and with how we treat celebrity accountability generally in this culture, in this moment, in this broken system that rewards bad behavior and protects the powerful while grinding up regular people. This incident shows his contempt for regular people. It shows his inability to control his impulses even in professional settings where behavior standards are clearly established. It shows his belief that he's above the rules that govern everyone else. It shows that even after all the controversies, all the apologies, all the promises to be better, he hasn't changed at all. He's the same person who filmed that body in the forest. He's the same person who scammed his fans out of millions. He's just better at hiding it most of the time, and occasionally the mask slips and we see exactly who he really is underneath all the branding and PR and carefully managed public image. Here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to admit because it implicates all of us in this broken system and forces us to examine our own role in enabling toxic celebrity culture. We enable this behavior through our continued support, engagement, and inability to hold people accountable beyond a temporary news cycle. Every single time we watch his content, whether we're hate-watching to laugh at him or genuine fans who still support him, we're adding to his view count, boosting his videos in the algorithm, and making him money through ad revenue. Every time we buy Prime Energy drinks, whether we like Logan or we just think it tastes good or we want to support the brand for other reasons, we're putting cash directly in his pocket and proving that controversy doesn't hurt sales. Every time we tune into his WWE matches, even if it's just to boo him or hope he loses or see him get beat up, we're proving to WWE that he's a valuable asset worth keeping on the roster and giving prominent positions. Every time we talk about him, post about him, make videos about him, even videos like this one that criticize him harshly, we're keeping him relevant, keeping him in the conversation, keeping him in the algorithm, ensuring that he remains a topic of discussion that drives engagement across platforms.